Welcome back to the Monday Musings. Alright, so this was actually a topic that I promised I would do, and I actually forgot about. So that's why I'm doing it today. I was going to cover left-hand path and right versus right-hand path today, and then in 2 weeks' time do my video on the clipotic, but I'll see if I can combine those two, or otherwise it will just spill over to next month. But today, let's talk about how to practice in small spaces. And we'll extend this a bit as well into how to practice if you cannot publicly practice. Okay, you have to stay in the closet. All right, so let's start with small spaces. So I have this problem now. I always used to have live in houses where I had a spare room and I could set up the spare room as a temple room. But over the past 5 years, it's been very much a situation where I don't have that space. So I have had to adjust and adapt and learn how to work in small spaces. And a lot of people lately have been asking, especially in regards to things like casting the circle, whether it's a Wiccan circle, whether it's a demonolatry circle, whether it's treading the mill, laying the compass, whatever it is, how do you do this in such a small space? Now, the obvious reply to that is go outside. Sometimes we can't go outside. We don't have those spaces that we can go to on a daily or weekly or even monthly basis. We may have a park nearby, but it's not like we can go there with our athame and our sword and wand and all of our tools and, publicly cast a circle and things like that with everybody watching. So we are often forced to do this in our own home, and our own home quite sometimes is just one room. One room, which is bedroom and lounge. You have a kitchen, you may have a bathroom, but the space is very, very limited. So if you can, move furniture. Move furniture out to the sides so that you have a space in the middle that you can maybe work in. It doesn't need to be a 9-foot circle, but enough to just kind of walk in a circle. All right. If you can't do that, then the minimum space you need is enough space to be able to sit cross-legged on the floor. Okay. If you can sit cross-legged on the floor, then you have space to cast a circle, because what you can do is you can stand up, you can face east, you can do whatever you're doing, whatever tradition you're following, and then instead of walking in a circle from one quarter to the next quarter, all you do is you turn. So you're facing this way, you turn, okay, and then you do it in the next quarter, you turn to the next quarter, and you do whatever you need to in that quarter, you turn to the next quarter. So instead of walking, this obviously, if you want to tread the mill, that's a bit different. But if you are just doing a circle casting, you can just turn. Now, there is something to actually walking the circle. It's the same as treading or ploughing the bloody acre within traditional witchcraft. But even if it's a Wiccan circle or a demonolatry circle or ceremonial magic circle, whatever circle it is, the actual walking around defines the space. It starts to move the energy in a circle. Okay, so there is something to that. Don't kind of just reject that and say we don't need it. It definitely has its place. It definitely has a reason for for actually doing it. There is a reason for doing it. There you go. But if you don't have the space, you have to adjust and you have to adapt. So standing in one spot and just turning and facing the various quarters and doing what you need to in the various quarters. That's one option. Another option is to work in an astral temple. And when you work in an astral temple, all you need is a space to sit in. So sit on the floor, sit on a chair, sit on your bed, whatever it is. That's all you need. Okay. And you move into your astral temple, you build your astral temple, and you can do your workings however you want to. Okay. So that's another option. That's also very good if you cannot publicly proclaim, or you have to stay in the closet, you cannot publicly practice. So you may live in a house with parents or roommates or something like that, and you can't do any kind of practice where you make a noise. You may be able to go into your bedroom, lock the door, and do your practice. So you can move around, but you may not be able to verbally say anything so other people in the house can hear you. And that's fine. You can whisper. Whispering is a very good thing. You can internalize the whole thing verbally. When we talk about doing like mantra yoga, for instance, you can verbally, audibly chant a mantra, you can whisper a mantra, or you can just do it internally with no sound at all. So, when we are calling God names or angelic names or demonic names, doing the ends, whatever it is, we can do it verbally, or we can whisper, or we can do it internally. I actually like to whisper because it's kind of in between. It feels like a liminal practice because it's kind of in between the loud verbal practice and the internal non-verbal practice. So you get this whisper kind of in between the two. So there's many ways you can practice. You don't need a lot of space, and if you cannot publicly practice, then there's ways to do that as well. Do you need all the tools? No, you do not need all the tools. The tools become an extension of yourself. They also hold particular energies. They can hold familiars and things like that, but it's not absolutely necessary. If you do not have the tools, it does not mean you cannot practice. Let's put it that way. It's just the tools become an additional thing. So if you cannot have the tools, don't have the tools. If you can't wave an athame around or a wand or whatever it is, don't have them. You have a finger. This points. Okay, so this can be athame, a wand, etc. If you can light a candle, most people can light a candle, and it doesn't actually need to be an actual candle with a flame. It can be an electronic candle if you can't light a candle with a flame. If you can't light incense, that's fine. You can use aromatherapy oils if you can use that. And usually these kind of things are accepted in a household. Candles and aromatherapy oils or incense. Not always incense, so aromatherapy oils. Just get one of those little, I'm not sure, I think it's just called an aromatherapy oil lamp or something. It's like a little cup, and you put the oils in there in some water, and then you put a tea light underneath, and it heats up and lets out the fragrance. So whatever you can get. Whatever you cannot get, don't get. It's really as simple as that. You don't need all of the tools. It's nice to have the tools, and they have a particular purpose, just like actually walking in a circle has a particular purpose to create that energy, to get that energy moving in that circular format. But it's not absolutely necessary. It doesn't mean you cannot practice if you don't have those things. So just find a way, improvise, use your imagination, whatever it is, you can do it. There's no reason why you cannot. Okay, so I think that gives you some ideas of what to do if you do work in a small space and you don't have a lot of room to do things. If you want to build an altar really just needs to be a candle, incense, and a glass of water. if you're making offerings to spirits. If you're not making offerings to spirits, you don't actually practice with gods and goddesses. You don't even need the water unless you want to make an offering to your higher self, for instance. So, but really, that's what it really needs to be. It's just a candle, incense, and water. And you can put that on a side table. You can put it on a bookshelf. Don't put it inside the bookshelf, because if you've got a bit of a fire hazard there. But if it's a low bookshelf, you can put it on top of the bookshelf. And over time you can add things to it. If you don't want people to know what you're doing, then you can get representations of things. What animal does your particular spirit that you've got, a goddess, demon, angel, whatever, what animal is representative of them? If you celebrate Lilith, maybe it's an owl. If you celebrate Hecate, maybe it's a dog. Things like that. So you can get a statue of an owl or a dog and put that on, and that becomes a representation of the goddess, and nobody's going to question that. People like owl statues, so they're just going to go, oh, that's a nice statue. They're not going to ask what it's for, because it's just an owl statue. You just liked it, and you decided to put it on your bookshelf. So there's all these things you can do that are not obvious, and you can still practice. Okay. All right, so I think that's it. I think that gives you plenty of ideas and things to consider. Okay, so have a good one. I'll see you next week. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.